So at a time when schools are facing increased pressures due to the fact that careers funding has been cut from school budgets, teachers are finding it more and more difficult to find work experience for their pupils. So one of the things that our group discussed was the possibility of kind of having a dating website where teachers, students and parents could go to a single place to find companies that are willing to take work placement students locally. And for the local industry folk, they could advertise those placements on there as well. In addition to that, often when talking to employers about taking work experience children, they have often said that there's lots of red tape, or they perceive there to be lots of red tape in actually having a student. So health and safety, also the what was the CRB checks. So having some guidance, you know, 7 steps to success for taking a student placement would be really, really useful to local employers. Now, if you think about business and the world of work, it's all about relationships. So if I'm a child and I look on there and I think, oh, IBM might take somebody, I'm going to apply for a work experience. So if IBM were to also think about advertising their professional apprenticeships, I'm not really sure about the name of apprenticeship in the 21st century is really relevant now, but if they were to advertise those on that same website, together with the colleges that offered those apprenticeships, a student might look at it and think, well, actually, I'd really like to get an apprenticeship at a company, and if I'm thinking about long-term going to that company for my apprenticeship in my college, I might like to think about going to them for my work experience as well. I think the website should be aimed primarily at parents and at students, so that in the language that they understand, so that they can access it, so that the parents and the children can make informed decisions, and that companies should be able to advertise on there what they are doing to support work placements for children in years 10 and 11, but also then what they're doing to support apprenticeships. I think the other thing that's really important is thinking about the industry placement on a degree course. So in my degree course, it was the 3rd year of the degree. I learned so much from going out on industrial placement from a lady called Jane DeCourcy, more than I ever probably learned in some respects from my degree, to make me employable. And I think that moving forwards, students need that option of a blend to know that regardless of whether you take an apprenticeship or whether you take a degree, both should have that workplace environment at the heart of their studies. And actually, in some respects, I think the degree should be somewhat longer and encourage multiple placements, because actually, again, it's about building relationships. So, for example, when I left my industrial placement, there was a job offer if I wanted it when I'd finished university. Why is this important? Well, if you work with many local small businesses, as I did when I worked in industry, there's a massive risk to employing somebody. But if you were to take on somebody as an apprentice, or potentially as an industrial placement student when they're at university, you already know what they're like, you've got a vested interest in training them up, and then when they leave university, the relationship is there to enable them to go into a career when they graduate that's relevant to their qualification. It also, I think, would encourage people when they are out in industry to go back and do further studies. That isn't taking time out of their work to go and study for 3 years, but actually be doing some constant professional development at their local university, at their local college, to ensure that they are relevant and suitable to the marketplace in the next 5 years. There's a lot made of the fact that 40% of the jobs didn't exist 10 years ago, and I suspect that number will rise. So what we've got to make sure we do is we have a workforce that's flexible and adaptable to change. Okay, so when working in school, I noticed that most teachers never had any problems filling their extracurricular clubs with students who are keen and passionate, probably because the teachers were keen and passionate about the extracurricular club and the thing that they wanted to pass on, that knowledge and that excitement and the enthusiasm for the topic that they were teaching. When thinking about curriculum design, I think that we must always think about the stakeholders when designing the curriculum. So for example, we need to engage the students and we need to engage our colleagues to ensure that they are also passionate about what we're teaching them. This is quite a contrast to traditional teaching. Many of the schools that I visit and I've worked in, we tend to focus on what we're teaching them, how we're going to teach it, which might be to click, 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 follow my leader or do some sort of step-by-step worksheet, and then why we're teaching it to them, which is usually to solve an assessment challenge or to achieve a particular grade. That's not very exciting and engaging and motivating for students. At my school, what we decided to do was try and flip that. So what we did was we focused on why we were teaching it. So we thought about solving a challenge or solving a problem. We then thought about how we're going to solve it through computational thinking, a thought process. And then what the students produced may or may not have been a piece of programming or a piece of work. But it was also what did they actually learn in terms of what we were trying to teach them. And actually this works really well because it's good marketing techniques. If you think about how the big companies like Microsoft, Apple, etc., market their products to us. And I think that moving forwards, we've got to think very carefully about how we engage our students with curriculum design, but also think about how do we change the assessment methods in schools and qualifications to ensure that we do have this flexibility and this freedom and this autonomy to encourage the children to think about challenges they would like to solve.